Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today we are back in War Thunder and looking at the new addition to my hangar, the Type-62. This is a Chinese vehicle which is based on the Chinese Type-59, which I can basically find is a copy of, or a very, basically a Chinese copy of the Russian Type 54 / Type 44. That's basically what it says. So it's a Chinese design, which is a lighter version of the Type 59. So what we're looking at here is a tank which is supposedly a light version of the Type 54 that we have in game. What is nice about having the Type 62 is that it opens up the ability to maybe add the Chinese Type 59 in game, even though it may be very close to the Russian T-54. Maybe it can still be in game. I mean, why not? Maybe have it as a premium, a tier 4 premium. Now that we have the Type 62, the reason I've had to re-record this video and why this video is a day late is because they completely changed it overnight. It was at 5.7 at rank 4, and now it is at 6.7. Now the only difference to it is that they've added in a Heat FS shell, the 3BK2, which pens up to 300mm at all ranges. So the fact that they've added one shell and it's gone up a whole 1 OBR to 6.7 kind of annoys me, but we'll get into that in a bit. Let's go through general things about this tank. It's quite nippy, which is nice. Being a light tank, you would hope for that. It has literally no armor, but it still bounces weird shots that it really shouldn't bounce. If you've ever used a T-44 or T-54, you'll know what I mean, where at certain angles, or just for some weird odd reason, the tank itself will just bounce odd shots off its turret, or its gun mantler will just eat a shot when it really shouldn't. So, that's a nice little thing that the Type 62 has. Generally, you don't want to get shot in it, but, it happens sometimes. It has that wonderful 12.7 D-Shack on the top, which definitely will do damage to lightly armored vehicles, especially when we look at AA and stuff like that. 300 ammo isn't great on it, but it basically has a copy of a more advanced T-34-85 gun. If you look at the shells of the Type 62, we look at the BR365A and the BR367. It also gets APCR and of course that Heat FS, but just looking at the other shells, they are very similar to the T-34-85 shells, which are basically very, very good. It's the reason why it was at 5.7 instead of 6.7. And now that it's at 6.7, we now run into a whole host of problems, which is why I've had to completely change this video. At 5.7, it was wonderful. You had a great lineup. Type 62, IS-1, and then an AA vehicle in realistic. I went for the ZIS-43 just because I was, it's the latest thing I've unlocked. I was trying it out. And then you get the SU-6 with its 237s at 5.3, wonderful. And the LA-9 at 5.7. Which is an amazing fighter at 5.7, especially in ground forces. So you had an amazing lineup when it came down to it. Now that it's at 6.7, you still have a pretty decent lineup. You can throw in the T-44, the IS-2 Mod 44. The AA is pretty much an issue. You have the ZSU-37, which generally isn't very good against 6.7 stuff, but instead you can throw in a tank destroyer, let's say the SU-100 or the ISU-152, gonna do a lot of damage. So you've still got a good lineup. You can also throw in the ASU-85 if you feel like it. I generally stay away from that, just because, in my opinion, it's not very good. So, yeah. One good thing is that being a light tank, it obviously costs slightly less spawn points, meaning if you do die in it, at least you'll have a few more spawn points to get into something else. One of the big issues with it is it will generally get one shot. If you actually look at it in the customization panel, what you will find is that most of the tank is made out of ammunition, especially where generally a machine gunner would sit next to the driver. It has the bulldog syndrome, where instead of a machine gunner you just have a rack of ammo. So if you get shot through that front plate, which you will generally, since it's only 37.2 millimeters, well, let's just say you are dead. Generally, if somebody penetrates you, you're going to die. Just because the crew is very close together, and if they don't hit the crew, they're going to hit ammo, and at this level, especially at 6-7, you have a lot of big guns, which will penetrate you and kill you. No matter where you are, they'll shoot you. But as I said, there is still that opportunity to bounce really random shells. So, one of the things which has annoyed me about the Type-62, when it first came out and it was at 5.7, it didn't have Heat FS, and a lot of people were complaining that it didn't have Heat FS. Now for me, a Tier 4 5.7 with basically a T-34-85 gun is a very good tank, and it's going to be very good at grinding. Being Tier 4, you don't get the negative research loss if you're trying to research Tier 5s, but it's still pretty low. So you'll face mainly like Tiger H1s and stuff like that. So generally what you will do is you'll face things which can one-shot you, but you can also one-shot them, which is, you know, if you're going to go down that route, then that route can work very well for you. Now what we do, now that it's at 6.7, and let's say you don't have that Heat FS shell, which is in Tier 2, so it's going to take you a while to get it. What happens is, now you face Tiger 2Hs, now you face Panther 2s, now you face Ferdinands, now you face Kugelblitzes, which can shoot straight through you all day long. Then we go over to the Americans. You face the Pershing, which is a better matchup, but still a not great one. The M46, which is once again an okay matchup. The T-26E1, which I still believe is broken to this day. And then for the British, you have the Carnarvon, the Centurions, stuff like that. And then if we go all the way to Japanese, well, the Japanese at 6.7, you know, you're going to do well against. It's going to be a pretty good, even fight at least. So, what does this mean? It means that, because of one Heat FS shell that you get in your Tier 2 modifications, this thing has been boosted by one whole BR, completely changing how this thing plays. Before, you could shoot things, you would still have to aim shots, especially against something like a Tiger H1, but you could go through it, as long as you aimed the shot in that little flat plate. And generally, you were facing, you know, Americans, you'd face something like a Hellcat at 5.0. That's a very good matchup because you both have guns which can easily penetrate each other. It's a nice matchup. One's a bit quicker, the other one's got slightly more armor. You know, it works well. But now at 6.7, I'm stuck with a tank which cannot pen anything if I face Germans, which are the majority of players in Tier 4, 6.7 because of that wonderful Tiger 2, Panther 2 combo. So, what do I do against them? Well, I can't do anything, and I can get destroyed by all of them. If somebody has a lineup of the Tiger 2H, the Panther 2, and the Kugelblitz, which is generally the lineup that people are going to be running with, especially now that we have the new ME262, which we will look at tomorrow, what's going to happen? I'm going to get blown out the water until I get that Heat FS shell. So this, for me, is a wonderful example of a tank which should have its BR changed depending on what modifications you have. I have been talking about for years now in tanks. There should be BR changes on tanks depending on what modifications you have. Parts and FPE are two massive upgrades and modifications for a tank. The fact that, in a Type-62 now, all I have is parts and a horizontal drive, and I'm supposed to go out and face fully upgraded Tiger 2s, fully upgraded Panther 2s, and now with the new crew replenishment, now you have even an even smaller chance of killing something because of that. But because I can magically eventually get the Heat FS shell after getting my shit canned in for, you know, 50 matches or so while I research it, then it's all fine, then it's all great. But no, I'm not happy with that. This thing was good at 5.7. You could even say it would be good at 6.0 because it would generally face the same stuff, but now it's at 6.7, it is completely useless to me. until I get that Heat FS shell. So what would be good? Maybe you could make it so BRs change depending on modifications that you have. Let's say it starts at 5.7, then I get parts, right? Then parts, you can push it up to 6.0. Then you get FPE, maybe it doesn't change. Then you get that Heat FS and it pushes it up to 6.7. Because the thing is, BRs are based on if you have a fully modified vehicle. So if a Type-62 is at 6.7, it is supposed to be fully modified at 6.7, and that's when it does well. But if it is not fully modified at 6.7, it is completely useless. I cannot pen the front of a Tiger 2 in this thing now. I have to aim specifically at where the gunner is, and maybe I'll hit. But without that key upgrade, which is adjustment of fire, I fire all over the place in this thing because they decreased the accuracy of guns depending on if you have that modification, basically making that modification a necessity now. If you want to see an example of this, if you have a Jagdpanther, right, go and play that Jagdpanther and take off your horizontal drive. See the difference. It turns from a very accurate 88 to I'm firing all over the map, what is going on, why is my shell going at a 45-degree angle? So the Type-62 is in exactly the same position, where without these upgrades it is not a 6.7 tank, and this is a gift vehicle. A gift vehicle should not be a vehicle which stands out compared to everything else, but it should be a vehicle which is worth using. This is why I like vehicles such like the ZUT-37 or the MBR2 M34 or the TB3 or the i301. These are interesting vehicles. They're maybe not the i301, but now it's at 2.7, it's a bit better. But these, the MBR and the TB3 are not great vehicles, but they are interesting. They are something different. The Type-62 is just a light armored T-54. So what you've got to do, you've got to make it interesting. And by making it interesting, they put it at 5.7 and took away its Heat FS. And if you want to talk about being historically accurate, right, so the Type-62 did not have Heat FS in the game, but it did in real life. That was basically the argument, so therefore it should have it in game. You know what I'm facing in my Type-62 now? I'm facing a Kugelblitz, which never existed, a Panther 2, which definitely didn't exist, and a Tiger 2, which did exist. But guess what? It broke down a hell of a lot and was broken. And guess what? If I go up by 0.3 BR, I face a 105 Tiger, which breach would murder everyone in its turret before after it fired. If you look at the damn breach in go to like the customization and then look at the X-ray. Look where the breach is. That loader's getting his head knocked off straight away after that gun fires. So please don't tell me about historical accuracy when I'm using something at 6.7 and mainly facing stuff which never existed or was not even built. For the love of God. And now that it's at 6.7, now it opens me up to facing stuff at 7.7. Guess what? The mouse is at 7.7. Do you want to talk about that? How about the Colian, right? How about all of these wonderful things which never existed that I now face? So thank you very much for that. Thank you for giving me a vehicle which now you've had to give Heat FS to make it useful at 6.7, even though it was perfectly fine at 5.7. And it was at tier 4, so you still, as I said, you still get the bonus in tier 5. Overall, is it a good tank? It was wonderful at 6.7, it was a nice breath of fresh air, quite a slow turret, quite nippy for a light tank, but still not very fast. Very small, very light, easily one shot, but you could easily one-shot something too. It worked well with the T-34-85, it worked well with the IS-1, it worked well with the ZIS-43 or the ZSU-37, whatever you want to put in. You could put in some wonderful aircraft, and now at 6.7 it's completely useless until I get battered. And until I get battered for a few games and eventually get the Heat FS. So thank you for that, community. Very nice of you. Now I have a completely useless tank. Now, the way to rectify this is to either give people modifications after they get the Type-62. So it is sat in the premium vehicles tree, but it does not get a premium bonus. But what would be nice is maybe you get some modifications after unlocking it. So maybe you get parts FPE and heat FS, something like that. Then I'll be fine with it at 6.7. But right now, no, you get it fully brand stock, and it gets absolutely twatted at 6.7 by fully upgraded machines. Now, oh, you want me to pay Golden Eagles to get this thing upgraded? Oh yeah, I could do that. And I understand where they're coming from, where Gaijin is coming from to do this. But I'm not gonna do that, because I don't really put any money into this game. So yeah, thanks. Thanks for giving me this tank. Anyway, I'll see you next time. Tomorrow we'll look at the ME262.